a unit of blood, obviously stayed in the hospital for quite a bit of time, but the patient actually was discharged and went home. So think about your providers as you're building this, and if the fire chief would lose his mind if he saw him, Kevin, don't take a picture of this. But basically, what do you do? So basically, they've got such pride that they started putting little blood drops when they administered a unit of blood on their vehicle. Again, this is another medical case where basically this was a valve replacement. Patient's blood pressure is palpa 70. They give the blood. They're excited they gave the blood. This is a 32-year guy in the fire service. Think about that, 32 years in the fire service and you're sending a text about a medical patient. We just never saw stuff like that before. Here's another one, heavy motor vehicle collision. They get there and the blood pressure's in the trash can, 88/50, heart rate 130. They give 1 unit of blood pressure's 120/80, heart rate's 102. And look, they said, I need more. This is like the movies, where they're smuggling drugs. Hey, I need more. Give me more drugs. That's what they're doing here. They're pushing so much blood and making such a difference that you can't get them enough. And another one here. So I could go, the reason why I chose these 4 is because these providers all have 25 years or more on the job, which I think is just remarkable and phenomenal. Then the last part is demonstrate gratitude and give back. I think that's so important because you start a program and sometimes people take the program and they just run with the program and they forget about where they came from. So to me, it was so important that I wanted to make sure Mr. Epley got an email from me as soon as the trauma surgeons finally said, hey, listen, what you did made a difference here. So I wanted to reach out to his team, and it's an honor again to be here today. But I also want to thank New Orleans EMS, and they're here in the house today too. I also want to thank Broward Sheriff's Office because they were already doing blood just south of us in South Florida, and they helped us drastically as well. And then of course, STRAC, we're so thankful for each and every one of you for not just having us here today, but really laying the groundwork for us. And then what we decided to do to give back is we paired up with New Orleans EMS. We paired up with Dr. Duchesne out of Tulane. And basically what we've done in the South Florida region is it's not as detailed as the Whole Blood Academy, but with the help of Randy and Dr. Roach, Dr. Antevi, Dr. Duchesne, obviously Dr. Peel. Obviously, Dr. Antevi is super upset he's not here today moderating this. Unfortunately, he got caught in the weather. He wanted to make sure that I told everyone that, but he really wanted to be here with us. But Madonna, Randy, Madonna, and Candace, the one taking the picture there, they work in the trauma centers. So by bringing everyone together, and then of course our folks in the military, TC and Andrew, we're really just going out there from a grassroots style, just making sure everyone has what they need to start the programs because it really does make a difference. The Spark registry, so the Spark group, basically Dr. Duchesne, if you're curious about what that registry looks like and submitting your data, obviously his email's right there, please take a picture. And again, I'll just close out with the 5 lessons that I learned and my organization learned, which we're so thankful for. Number 1, bring everyone to the table. And they feed you here. That is one thing, they close a lot of deals at the table. I learned that for a fact. And if they can't do it with that, they'll get that old-fashioned cart. That's where it's at. So that's where I learned the yeah, that didn't work so well. So if you're gonna take a lesson, don't take the back. The chief didn't think that was so cute. Be prepared for the naysayers. There's gonna be plenty of people that says you shouldn't do this, you can't do this, and I'm just gonna tell you, push through it because I promise you it'll be worth it. Track your data and publish the results. You should be proud of that. We use that to take it back to our commissioners. As a matter of fact, we have a community out west where we're expanding our services, and the chief went to the county administrator and said, hey, I need 3 chiefs out at this area because this area is expanding. And she looked at him. Never has this happened, they say, in the history, our 40-year history of our fire department. She looked at him and she says, what does the chief do? So he gives this whole thorough thing, and she says, does the chief carry the blood? And they said, no, it's the EMS captain. She says, put 3 more positions in. I want blood out there as well too. So when you make that profound of a difference that the county administration is telling you that that's what you need to be doing, then I really would follow that. But you gotta be able to publish it. You gotta be able to brag about it. You gotta be able to share the stories, because otherwise, then it's a moot point. Celebrate your victories, and then always have an attitude for gratitude. Be thankful. I'm super thankful. I'm super thankful to each and every one of you for putting this time in to make your organizations better. And I'm definitely thankful to the folks at STRAC. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here. CJ Winckler, I'm the Deputy Medical Director at San Antonio Fire Department, and I don't have this anywhere in my slides, but I will say, and I've never really thought about it, beyond just mentioning it, but probably out of the 158 EMS agencies that have blood, I've helped a significant number of those. I've been honored to help a significant number of those start. And interestingly, a lot of the same questions get asked over and over. That's okay, I'm willing. It's a little bit like Groundhog Day, but I'm willing to do it. I would say that in San Antonio, we don't take it for granted, but this is certainly our daily operation. So we're very blessed here to have this treatment and the rotation center. We'll talk all about it. So I'm trying to make everyone from out of state feel welcome. Sorry, anyone from the Northeast. Apologize. Seems a little aggressive looking at it now. So I think everyone to my right and to my left and everyone that does a blood program, especially the pre-hospital side, understands communication and collaboration are key. And Dr. Gomez mentioned it earlier that we met every week for hours. We ate a lot of pizza, a lot of sandwiches, and that's how you really solve problems. So first and foremost, communication and collaboration, just the programs won't work if you're not speaking the same language. And so I thought Dr. Antevi was going to be here, and so we might do a little back and forth on these slides, but that's okay. I'll try to fill in a little bit. But scope of practice, so solution for that, pilot program, COGS, protocols, transfusion medicine physician. So, speak the same language. So as an EMS physician, I don't think there are two more disparate personality types than a blood pathologist / transfusion medicine physician and an EMS physician. On a Cartesian coordinate, we're so far, we're probably looped back around because interestingly in my life as an EMS doc, I deal with a lot of pathologists in transfusion medicine and in the ME's office. So really the collaboration, it's nice that I have everyone's cell phone. I have the ME's cell phone, I have our transfusion doc cell phone, just important to speak the same language. Rotation system, it's really rude to waste blood. I have a personal philosophy on that, and I'll talk about it when we get to that slide. Cost of blood centers, solution. One solution is a grant. There's a whole bunch of other solutions, but cost to agencies, solution, form a state committee, as we've done in Texas. It's that state in the middle. And we basically have formed through a governor's council, a task force to work on all the pre-hospital transfusion questions. And if, I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but if we haven't got to say it to y'all, that our goal is to have a unit of pre-hospital blood in every county in Texas. That's 254 counties. Equipment and training, of course, and then the big cell, does it work? So scope of practice statement, the very first thing we did, you'll see my name on this paper and Dr. Jenkins' name on this paper, and this has been a minute ago. This is 2018, I imagine. So in 2018, we wrote a paper that says, we feel the best practice for EMS is to have a balanced blood-based pre-hospital resuscitation transfusion program. And we put that out in EMS World. I checked it yesterday. You can still Google EMS World and scope of practice for San Antonio Fire Department, and it still shows up. So right away we said, this is what we believe in. This is what we believe in. This is our scope of practice. So write your position statement or copy ours, work with the agency having authority and communicate with everyone involved. Ask me a question anytime. I'm preaching to the choir here, but basically this lecture is the thought that it's very difficult to transfuse blood pre-hospital in your state. Like say, pick a state west of us, California. Last week I presented to MDAC. Where's Dr.? There he is. Hey, brother. Okay, so that guy over there is a big deal, and I will say that it's probably not quite as easy to get pre-hospital blood in California as Texas. Would you back me up on that? So MDAC is the EMS Medical Directors Association in California, and it's just not the same. The scope of practice for paramedics, they can't transfuse blood, et cetera. So they have to work through that. Sorry you have to see this lecture twice, Dr. Kazan, but you're living this difficulty right now, right? All these little parts that seem easy when Chief Coyle and I are up here, it's difficult. It's difficult when you're building it. And I'm gonna take a break and say, Chief Coyle, I think the psh, psh, psh worked. I mean, psh, 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 it worked, bro. I mean, I'm sorry you got called. Sorry you got called in front of all those people. And we've been through this, but I just want to say that the one-to-one-to-one concept Dr. Holcomb put out, we believe in a balanced blood-based resuscitation. Unfortunately, pre-hospital without whole blood, it's really difficult to get that done. Would I settle for something else? Sure, of course, absolutely. But we believe whole blood's the right way. And in the spirit of this week and the conferences I've been to, I put a humble picture of myself up here. And I want to say this about this slide is that your law enforcement, your fire and EMS really are fantastic about donating their blood to this program. And if you don't have a way to get your team, we have 8 hours at San Antonio Fire Department. So 2 4-hour times that they can go donate blood. So it's a big part of what we do. Systematic approach, constantly believe in a systematic approach. These are all the folks that made our program start. And if you didn't hear me say this 4 years ago at the Whole Blood Summit, then we got the grant, South Texas Blood and Tissue. These are all the people that make it happen. By the way, Dr. Gomez in the bottom left, Dr. Rebon in the top right, those two have also worked with countless other EMS agencies, hospitals, and blood centers to make this work. And that slide is not even, there needs to be about 20 more agencies on that slide. Communication, yep, we meet a lot, we talk about it, we know all the blood in our system. And if you've seen this slide once before, I apologize, but I just have to say, the funnest story of triplicate is just tell your newest guy, you just have to press hard. You don't have to fill it out 3 times. So that was one complaint we had. So that's a training problem. That's my fault. I apologize. I still remember the credit cards that had to swipe through the triplicate thing. Also, don't throw away your blood bags. Need to turn those segs in because it's extremely important for your transfusion medicine physician to know what the native blood type is. You can read all the stuff on the left over there, but what I'll say about this is a really difficult part for a lot of people to get going. Really difficult. I will say that in Houston, we have a level 2 trauma center that has done a mini version of this with a couple of EMS agencies where they're using blood in their trauma center now, and they will let EMS have it for the first 2 weeks and use it in their trauma center and exchange, and they have a very low, almost 0% wastage rate. So that's a really, really big deal to me. The regionally approved equipment list is helpful. You have to have a good RAC or that equivalent organization in your state or area to make this work. And then we've talked about the donor population, et cetera. Paperwork process, paperwork. That's how my medics feel about paperwork. They put their boot right on it. So, it's important though. It's important. That stuff is just important to make the program keep working. Strat can do anything. This amazing app we have. Reimbursement. Okay, so for blood centers, whole blood's not cost-effective in current models. I really don't know. I don't have a lot of insight into blood centers throughout the U.S., but I will say that the concern is that it's expensive to start a new program if you're used to building, we have the Toyota manufacturing plant of pickups here in town. If you're used to building Toyota pickups and then someday, Strat comes and asks you to build a Jeep, it's like, we don't really build Jeeps. So that can be a little difficult. There's quite a few studies out there saying that there's less blood used in the hospital the earlier you give. So maybe that's something, where you're losing money on that. But reimbursement is difficult. I don't have an answer for blood centers necessarily. For EMS, same thing. Great job saving lives. We're not giving anything for that. Although EMS has been pretty used to that for a while, right, Chief Waite? Good job saving lives. We'll reimburse you for the distance you drive. I've always wondered, can we just drive around the hospital like a couple more laps? So it's definitely something first and foremost on our mind. As you heard Dr. Kramer speak earlier, PHB TIC is working on that exact problem, as is NAMSP, National Association of EMS Physicians, has talked to their lobbyist and went and talked on Capitol Hill for that. And then for hospitals, this was mentioned earlier, we really do, lie is a strong word, but giving one-to-one, as Dr. Cannon said, is really difficult. I think it's human nature to want to give the red stuff first, and really it's not even possible on the ambulance to give one-to-one. Platelets last, 2 or 3 days? It's just not even, it's not even possible. Pre-hospital blood transfusion initiative, this is what we're doing in Texas. Does Florida have a similar program going? Perfect. And North Carolina? Yeah. Anybody else? And Colorado. So the 4 people that give blood are working on this, and yeah. And California? We got anything going in California, Dr. Kazan? Got any process for? No. Text message group. Awesome. Perfect. These are the, write the guidelines, still mine. I wrote these. I borrowed from Pamper and Combat, and some I borrowed from our own practice here and kind of built my own. You're always welcome to borrow those for any EMS systems and from out of town. We've always given, because we don't have anything else, we've always given to pediatrics. We've always given to females of childbearing age. And we've always given to medical patients since the first day we started giving blood, October 1st of 2018. Equip and train, there's a lot more equipment now than when we started. There was pretty much just the stuff the military used, but there's a lot more equipment. I don't have any financial interest in any of that stuff, but just pick what works for your system. And I always get asked about training. Training is pretty straightforward. It's like in the olden days, 6 years ago for me, 4 years ago for you. In the olden days, we used to tell folks, just give saline and fix their blood pressure. So sorry for all the patients that Eric Epley and I killed with 6 liters of normal saline pre-hospital. And then there was someone wrote a paper that maybe we shouldn't be giving a lot of fluid. I can't remember who it is, probably not important. Oh, Dr. Pepe wrote a paper that said, wait a second, if you only have saline, don't do anything. And so our crews have not been doing anything per se. We called it permissive hypotension, I think, until we had this option. So this is a game changer. I would completely agree with Chief Coyle that I had a couple of medics 30 years in, our EMS supervisors, that were just kind of done with EMS. And we started transfusing blood, and if science was my EMS lieutenants standing on this table in their work boots telling you it works, then we'd be done. I mean, we'd be done with the EMS science part of it. But I get asked a lot about this, and I ask the smartest people in the room, and maybe one day someone will tell me, but I just want to know, does blood work in the hospital? We always compare whole blood to component or balance-based component resuscitation, but what about whole blood to saline or component therapy to saline? I always ask that. I'm waiting for someone to tell me where that study is, and I'll read it and I'll be interested in it. But I did get asked by MDAC, I know I only have 45 seconds, I'll be right on time. I did get asked by MDAC physician, well, how come EMS, can y'all just do the study that compares blood to saline? Thanks for the chuckle, Phil. So I tried not to chuckle. You were there, Clayton. I don't know how good I was. I said, I think it's an ethical question. And I put this slide in and I was like, this is an ethical question to me. So as an ER doctor and an EMS doc, can you explain to me how physiology changes once the patient comes from outside to the hospital to inside the hospital, that they wouldn't need blood outside the hospital? So, for me, it's an ethical question. Data on pre-hospital transfusion, you've seen that all morning, but there needs to be more of it. I just want to share real quick what we're doing here in San Antonio, and I'll be done, I promise. 1.7 million residents. We started October 1st, 2018. Actually, as of this morning, we're right at 1,500 units of whole blood transfused pre-hospital. A little less than 75% is trauma and 25% is medical. So in red are patients we give blood to pre-hospital, and in gray, and this is about 650 patients we're looking at. So that question is answered for us. We don't take any more time. Actually, it's a little faster, but not statistically significant, to transfuse blood. Our adjusted odds ratio, so this is just straight up using the trauma registry. I did not look at these charts. This is just, and that means something to people who do trauma registry research, but I didn't look at any of these charts. I just looked straight off the top. So our adjusted odds ratio, 1.76, obviously crosses the confidence interval there for survival with pre-hospital blood. Penetrating trauma, looked at 370 patients. Interestingly, our adjusted odds ratio is 0.7 here in San Antonio, just for San Antonio Fire. And our confidence intervals 0.2 to 2.26. And then our blunt trauma patients, looking at a couple hundred, adjusted odds ratio is insane, but the confidence interval is pretty big. So we have our one more year of data on this study coming in, and that'll be 5 years of data, so we'll see how we do with that. I was just told yesterday that the trauma registries are complete for us to look at this. So my summary slide, rules and regs, as everyone in this room knows, money and medicine, and I forgot just how aggressive I was about loving Texas. But thank you all very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Winckler. Again, send in your questions, use the QR code for the discussion. Our next speaker was originally supposed to be Dr. Judson Edwards, however, he could not make it. And therefore, Randy has graciously
been
volunteered
voluntold
to present this part of the discussion.
Yes, I am not Judson. He has much better hair than I do, and I'm not an economist. So what Dr. Holcomb and I thought I would do is we have a paper coming out in the next month or two looking at the barriers to implementation. And through that paper is when I really was able to identify the different models of how blood is getting sourced and how it's managed. Instead of me telling you about it, I'm going to pick from the audience folks that contributed to that body of knowledge and just have them really quickly share where they're from, what they're doing. So David Long at a Tidewater EMS, I've had the privilege of working with their regional trauma system for several years now. And the regional trauma system controls the blood program, but in a very different manner than here in STRAC. So David, you want to take a couple minutes?
David, we had a card-carrying economist, healthcare economist who has an interest in blood, who speaks English, who writes well, speech clinician, who is the chair of economics at a college. I mean, a real card-carrying economist who was going to come and speak to this group and really add his viewpoint on blood and the economics. And I heard him speak a couple months ago in DC at another blood meeting, and the guy was incredibly articulate and impactful and had a viewpoint on this. You know, we're all kind of speaking to the crowd here. We all kind of believe in what we're doing. Whether it's right or wrong, we believe it. But he had a very different viewpoint on this. Now, unfortunately, and Judson has been on multiple calls. He'll be back again. He got COVID yesterday and is deathly ill right now and just absolutely can't come today. And so I kind of give that little preamble introduction for him. He'll be back. He'll be back. I really look forward to his viewpoint on the issues we've talked about, because the economics of this are really important, right? At all levels, the blood supply level, all the way through to where the rubber meets the road and we're giving blood pre-hospital. So I just want to do that for Judson just for a second. He'll be back and talk to us. Chief Long, Dr. Long, go ahead.
Well, that's a bit surprising, but not necessarily out of Randy. For us, I think the best way just to kind of frame this relatively quickly is that The STRAC program, Dr. Jenkins, Randy, and others had enough information out there visible for folks to see, right? That if you are an organization or an agency that is looking to constantly, push the envelope of, what are we doing to essentially impact outcomes. So quick evaluation of our trauma data indicated that we weren't doing a great job with trauma management. How do we take that next step? And obviously through the work laid by the folks down here, certainly indicated that the blood was the direction that we needed to go. Never did I expect it to be an issue where we were going to have to fight trauma surgeons, emergency department physicians, blood banks, and an assortment of others just to get to yes. So in that construct, we finally got the ED physicians and somewhat reluctantly drugged the trauma surgeons across the finish line, to yes. But then the obstacle became the blood supply. And the American Red Cross was a hard no. The hospitals quickly became a second hard no, which kind of left us at a point of this program's either going to succeed on just an intent to do the right thing and led us to a blood supplier, the Blood Connection out of South Carolina, and we entered into a contract with them. And essentially for now, since October of 2022, been working to deliver blood in our region. So we have 6 EMS supervisors across 4 jurisdictions, so 4 cities in the Hampton Road region of Virginia. Transfused 130 units of blood, and we have an 88 survive to discharge rate.
So what's interesting about the model in Virginia is that the blood comes from South Carolina in a cardboard box, arrives up in Virginia, and it actually goes to the Regional Trauma Advisory Council office. They bought a refrigerator, and so that's where they receive all the blood from the Blood Connection. And then the supporting agencies drive into his office to pick up the blood and to take it back out to their jurisdictions. And I think that was a logistics win because the courier cost associated with getting blood from South Carolina up to 3-4 locations in Virginia was going to be a little cost prohibitive. So he took on that responsibility at the Regional Advisory Council. And then the interesting part is they would not take the blood back. They will not allow return privileges. And David was really frustrated as we were working with the hospitals to try to, be able to rotate that into their system. But right now you've got a great partnership going on that you don't get money for the blood that you give the hospital, but tell us a little bit about the MilSiv partnership you have going on.
So to Dr. Winckler's point, right, wasting blood is, one of those things that none of us want to see and or hear about. Unfortunately, because of this type of model, we were at a waste rate that approached 40%. But we did finally have a win, courtesy of the United States Navy. So Naval Medical Center Portsmouth is in my backyard. They just achieved their level 2 trauma designation, and now they're taking the blood from me, essentially short dated, but using it now at the hospital. So that's reduced our waste down to 20%. And then on the fringe, I have one hospital that is working on their level 3 trauma designation that also has a contract with the Blood Connection. And once they're designated, then the opportunity to reconsign the blood back to that particular hospital to give me credit for the short dated blood will hopefully drive our waste rate down even further.
Awesome. So I think that's a pretty unique model out there that they had to adapt and overcome for some distance issues. Let's see, Eric Bank, one of the OG blood agencies, if you want to just quickly, and David, if you don't mind, approximately how much are you footing the bill from your RAC to support the citizens of your counties?
So interestingly, we just finished our fiscal year. So for fiscal year 23, I received $86,000 in donations, our financial donations, and then we expensed about $132,000. So the delta is what we're footing the bill for.
So that's his commitment to the program, is he's taken that out of hide at the Regional Advisory Council level to make sure that his supporting agencies can carry pre-hospital blood. Eric.
Hey, so my name's Eric Bank. I'm the Assistant Chief of EMS for Harris County ESD 48 Fire Department. We're a west suburb of the city of Houston, just a short 2 hours east of here. That's down the street for Texas. So we started in this process in 2016 with component therapy. After comparing a couple of patients from very early on in 1994 to a conversation with Dr. Holcomb about a patient we had in 2014 with no change in trauma care in 20 years. And it took us about 2 years to get component therapy to the streets. We initially worked our way through the hospital system. Everybody thought it was a great idea. It hit the C-suite, and the risk managers threw us out of the hospital, basically. Nicely, but still threw us out of the hospital. And we were able to circle back through Gulf Coast Regional Blood Center, who's our blood supplier. Component therapy we can initially swap, because they'll take that back. In August of 2017, we changed over to whole blood. And the hospital, or the blood bank for us at Gulf Coast, they call it a custom product. So we actually had to go out and create our own exchange. So we kind of have a handshake agreement with our level 1 trauma center. And on Mondays, kind of similar to what Dr. Goodlow was talking about, no matter when we get our units, on Monday they go back to the trauma center. The blood center handles the exchange as a third party, just moving the blood from point A to point B, but the actual handshake agreement and contract is between myself and the trauma center. And the one thing I did tell them is, in the event that they didn't use the blood, that we would go ahead and pay for it. We have yet to pay for a unit in almost 7 years now. But the reason that we work so hard to do that is because, again, it's kind of like what Dr. Winckler talked about and what David just talked about, is this is a pretty precious product. We just can't get online and order it. And so we want to make sure that it gets used in the most functional format and way.
Perfect. And I'm trying to see if I have any of my hospital-based programs. I don't see any. And in the back, it's a very bright light up here. We have Tom Dransfeld from New Orleans EMS, who has maybe a little similar model to Eric, but with a twist to support his area on the logistics of the blood.
Yeah, so hi, Randy. Thanks for calling on me. And
You're welcome.
so basically, we're very similar. We copied the San Antonio model. I reached out to Eric when we were starting. Basically, they were the OG guys did it, so we just copied what they did. We, similar to everybody else, we tried to go to the hospital first and say like, hey, and they ran us out, not so nicely probably as you did, Eric, but they pretty much cited like this liability reason, and that was very vague in what they said. So next thing that we did, we went down the block, literally 2 blocks from the hospital is where the blood center is. And that's where we went, and we said like, hey, can you hook us up with some blood? This is during like 2019-ish, 2020. They said, we can get you PRBCs, we can't get you whole blood. So we have basically a consignment deal with them now. We bought our original blood up front, we paid for it, and as long as it stays in temperature and everything, they'll swap it out when it comes up to its day. Every 14 days, they'll swap it out if we don't use it. So that's our consignment deal with them. We have it. So it's, not the best thing. We're looking to get whole blood. We've been talking with them for a while. They want to study it some more. I might need to call on Randy to help me persuade them a little bit. But it's the logistic stuff. Like something I didn't know, that all blood bankers, and Randy can maybe speak on this, don't always, some of them aren't set up for whole blood, right? To process it, establish it, make it, whatever. So it's a different process for them. So that's one of the hurdles we're having.
Excellent. So I think we have about a minute left. So I will cede my time to the panel discussion. Hopefully you all found that valuable, hearing directly from the source instead of from me. And I guess alternative. I was trying to see if if the hospital provided blood. I can speak to how North Carolina does it, but I don't see any of those. Actually, Grady's here. Are you familiar with how your logistics work? I don't want to put you on the spot. Yeah. Okay, all right. I forgot we had Grady here. And the economics of who pays for it.
Yeah, the economics I'm going to leave for the economic guys. But As for the logistics, we were pretty simple with it. Where we have lucked out completely is that Grady owns the EMS system. So things moving forward were really quick when we tried to initiate it. So we initially grant funding, as with everybody else, we knew pretty much exactly what we wanted to get out of it. We knew that the initial system was going to cost us about 100 grand. We knew exactly what product we wanted to buy, and that was all accomplished within 2 months or so. And then getting it out, pretty much the same as everybody else here, we decided to sub-select exactly what areas we were going for based on heat mapping, highest chances of penetrating. And we've got 3 QRVs on the road around our Grady Center, and then one a little bit further out with 8 total units of whole blood on the field. We went with the typical, prototypical devices that you guys are using, and we were able to get the entire program up and running within 3 months. And we are now at our 150th unit in 3 months.
So it's interesting. So they are a hospital-owned and operated EMS system. So my understanding is that they can actually charge it to the patient's hospital bill and I'm learning from my blood friends there's a difference between charging and billing and reimbursement, but that's why we need our economist here, so that you're able, your EMS agency, since they are tied, you're not putting out costs for the blood, correct?
Correct. And obviously, just to continue for one more second, zero wastage at the moment. We are recycling 1 week early. So at the 14th day, we recycle.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. I really put you on the spot. The others I gave a heads up I was going to put on the spot. Yeah, so we have lots of best practices emerging. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Holcomb for any final comments and to the patient.
Yeah.
Let's give Randy a round of applause for stepping in. And you know, one of the things that we really want to do is talk about the economics, and that's what Judson did at this other conference. The economic models are not uniform; they're wildly different, and they impact. We think that they're really impacting the lack of spread across the country, right? Right, Randy? Did I say that okay?
Yes.
And if we understand these various economic models, rather than recreating them at each place, you can copy the one that fits your place, right? It's kind of like politics. All politics are local. Many of these economic models are local as well. So anyway, more to come on that issue. We're actively engaged in it and want to spread that knowledge. Just like spreading the SOPs and the guidelines, we want to spread those models across the country. Jeff?
Great. Fantastic.
Do you want to talk about charging and billing and that kind of stuff, Jeff? I mean,
Me?
Yeah.
No, I would rather not do that.
So Jeff is my boss, and he gets on me about charging and billing every day.
Well, that's a different discussion altogether. Absolutely. Dr. Pepe, you're up on the panel. Any comments or I want to give you a chance to. Any comments? Okay. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Okay, we have some time for some questions. So I just wanted to, Chief Coyle, if I could ask, there are some agencies in my area around Birmingham, Alabama, who are trying to start pre-hospital blood programs. And you mentioned the naysayers. And what they're experiencing is among their own EMS personnel, they're getting some pushback about starting a program. Did you experience any of that in your?
So our providers were actually really excited about it, but they wanted to understand it. So I think it's very important to get a trauma surgeon involved early to explain the benefit. So my personal opinion is you got to find a trauma surgeon that believes that this is the right thing to do and use the trauma surgeon to educate them. Because if they ask you a question and you don't know the answer as the EMS chief, just do it, we'll figure it out, it's going to lose credibility quickly. So another thing that we ran into that was unexpected is I had an EMS supervisor that was a Jehovah's Witness. So, we basically, I told him, I said, oh, if you don't want to do this, you just need to let us know. And he had believed so much in what the trauma facilities were telling him, the people that we use for our education, that he said he would be fine with bringing the blood to the call. He just didn't want to be the one that was actually squeezing it into the patient through the life flow. So I think education is paramount. They'll believe, and then once they give it, forget about it. It's like, it's the Narcan of trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was it the EMS providers that?
It,
Is it the EMS providers that were uncertain, and were they uncertain on the clinical side, or did they just the operations side?
I think a little bit of both, but it was the EMS providers that were providing the pushback, and that was one of the pressure points they had to overcome to implement the program in his area. Yeah,
Shocking.
yeah, that's what I thought.
I mean, they're in the wrong business. Guns up.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting take. I think I would have to imagine they're in the minority, but I could be completely wrong. I don't know if we've ever done a survey to ask pre-hospital providers how they feel about providing a treatment that's been done for 80 years in the hosptal.
Sure. No, it was shocking to me as well. I didn't know if this was a uniquely Alabama thing, or if there were anybody else. I'm sure, 100% consensus is probably not achievable. I'm sure there's a few, whether they voiced it or not, that had some reservations.
I would have never believed that people as far as working for EMS, not having an EMS station, that's a model for a lot of folks, to just sit in the 7-Eleven parking lot in the ambulance. But I met someone that likes that.
Yeah.
So I guess there's always one.
It wasn't the majority, I can say that for sure. Paul?
One of the interesting things that came up with our own discussion when you were saying about pushback from the providers, I didn't see that really in the place where I've worked, but there were people who, for example, had religious reasons for not wanting to do it. We knew about in terms of the patients, but we even saw it with some of the providers, and we hadn't anticipated that, and you have to be thinking about that issue as well. It will come up, just something to be aware of.
And I would say that Matt Levy out of Maryland, is it Howard County EMS, Montgomery County? He actually has a fantastic education module that he went out to the communities that might be concerned and engaged with them. So I look to him for some best practices on how to handle that.
Yeah, so Dr. Levy had called me about some of our difficulties, and I said we had 2 Jehovah's Witness medics that were concerned about transfusing, and so he went full bore with that. He said, what do you do? And I said, we follow our local trauma center as far as transfusion into patients that are a religion, generally Jehovah's Witness, but not always, into that patient. And so we follow their process. And UHS, our trauma center in town, civilian, has a 14-page document and a 4-page document that Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Schaefer and I went through a while ago. The other thing is that it doesn't get said a whole lot for EMS med directors in the room is that if the product has hepatitis or some type of virus in it, then you are responsible for that, is the transfusing physician. So I find, that catches some EMS med directors off guard a little bit. At least you have to account and report. Now, everything's up for interpretation when it comes to pre-hospital transfusion. Who's responsible and who's not. I don't know if this was addressed in our paper, Dr. Holcomb, that we wrote, but
Yeah, I think that's BS. Bang, bang. Next question.
Crap ton. Crap ton.
yeah, so hopefully we'll be provided with some guideline. But for now, I do report to the patient as I'm told I'm supposed to do by our
Yeah,
blood
that's,
center.
I've lived through transfusion, kind of like Paul. We were talking about this in the HIV era. I started my medical life when we had AIDS wards. And I will tell you, I've given lots of blood to patients now, a lot of blood. And that thought never crosses my mind, not once. It's a risk-benefit world, right? It's like giving penicillin. Anyway, That's kind of like what, my response is a little bit like what Jeff said. You've never heard of an EMS provider pushing back. I have never heard that discussion in the pre-hospital blood world, ever, and would be happy to talk more about it. We have a question in the Zoom world. Zoom world, right? Make that come live overhead? Yes. Well, I'll jump right into that. I personally, again, have kind of lived through the rapid infuser warmers, the Belmonts, the level ones over time. It's my opinion that we overload the right atrium, right ventricle by putting fluids, blood products in too fast. I turn those rapid infusers down to about 100 mils per minute. And that's a unit of red cells every 2 minutes, right? 100 mils a minute, 2.5 minutes. That's pretty quick. And if you look at blood versus crystalloid response, physiologic response, I think that that's more than adequate. So there are some preclinical data about speed of infusion. Slower is better than faster. It's not what you think. And I think when you do ED thoracotomies and look at the right atrium, right ventricle, it's pretty easy to overstim those two things by putting in blood products too quickly.
Yeah, so, hi, Peter, wish you were here. So, so we had this discussion. There are some devices that can get the blood in faster and some gun-type devices. We used the cheapest device we could find, which was the inline hand squeeze pump. But interestingly, after Dr. Paul Pepe ruined pre-hospital saline infusions for everyone, a lot of those large bore, internal bore diameter tubing companies went out of business for pre-hospital infusions of fluids. So we actually called a company that had been in business back in the day, and we rebuilt it off the shelf. So the short answer is we can get 500 mils of whole blood into a patient in about 3.5 minutes with a 14 gauge. I don't know. I'd have to lean on my people to my right in the room to really say, is that, minute or two faster we created of transfusion with the larger tubing that big a deal? But what I can say is that we could, in theory, give 2 units of blood pre-hospital because we have an average of 8 to 9 minute transport time. So, there is that possibility.